am going to tell you that I am Frazier. I'm on tonight with two men of very good character that I have the utmost love, trust, and respect for. Those people are, as on your screen there, Judge James Cooper and Reverend Kenneth G. Jones. And welcome, gentlemen, to the Clarion Call to Black Men.
Thank you for having us, Chief.
Good evening. Thank you for having us, Chief.
I see a brand new president and a brand new vice president dealing with building the infrastructure of this nation. I see black women full steam ahead on progress, communications, understanding, and imagery as far as girls are concerned. I see white women have been smart enough to latch on to the coattails of those black women. And they too are being blessed with all kinds of positive, productive growth and development. I am afraid though as a black man that I'm seeing too little being done for our young black boys and other black men. And I believe that we are the only somebody can do it. Now I want to know from you, man, how can we up the status of black men in this nation? Judge Cooper, what say ye?
I think first we hear this phrase a lot that says, black girl magic, girl power. But we don't hear a phrase black boy magic or black boy power. So I think we have to, those are just mere words, but those mere words have resulted in action on the part of those sisters. I think we have to go from mouth to movement and go from silence to movement. It's always easy to talk about what we're going to do. I think we have to take the Nike phrase and just do it. We're going to make mistakes along the way in doing it, but I think we have to just start where we are and build ourselves back one child at a time. And, you try to reach 5 and you save 1. Well, that's 1 that's saved. You try to reach 5 the next time and you save 2. Well, that's 2 that's saved. You know the story about the boy walking on the seashore with the starfish. Throw 1 back in and save that 1 because it makes a difference. We can make a difference in a boy's life or a child's life by what we do, how we encourage them, and what we say. But we have to stop saying, well, I raised mine and I don't have time, let somebody else do it. Because if we don't do it, we are the somebody else. So I think we have to take it one young man at a time. But what's key is that we have to reach them at an early age. So we have to have a game plan. How do we reach them at an early age? There are things we can do. We can just adopt a child and take them under our wings and build that relationship with the parent, particularly if it's a single parent home. But I don't buy the notion about sisters can't raise boys. I grew up in a house where I had 2 aunts and a grandmother, but there's 12 in my family. So I went to live with my grandmother and aunts during the week, went back home to my dad and mom on the weekend. But I had 4 other uncles who were around me, and they taught me a lot of things, including my father on just how to work with my hands. And I took pride in that. And they taught me about always do your very best work. I think we have to get our boys to stop just doing just enough to get by. But the system don't care about me, it doesn't matter anyway. And find out what our niche is, whatever it is. Whether it's just being a carpenter or sweeping the floor, and take pride in it. And that's what we got to get instilled in our boys, because we sometimes feel like we are being left behind. Because the sisters are going on. Because there's this whole thing, the girls are going to be all right. Well, the question is, what about the black boys? What about the black boys?
Reverend John.
Well, I agree that we have a really large task in front of us. I'm often reminded of one of my favorite books, the Bible, and that's the book of Nehemiah. Nehemiah was in a comfortable position. He had a good government job. He was living large, working in the king's palace, eating well, living well, dressing well. He had everything that anyone could want materially. But he also had something that a lot of people don't want. He had a burden. And he had a burden that Jerusalem lay in ruins. And I'm down here in Shushan in the king's palace. I'm not in Jerusalem, but I can do something about what's going on in Jerusalem. And the thing that he did, the project that he undertook that started to turn the tide of the fate of Jerusalem was rebuilding a wall. And folks look at that and think, well, you know, what's so important about that? They had a whole bunch of other issues. The temple wasn't built. They had enemies all around them. They had all kinds of problems. Folks barely had enough to eat. But Nehemiah saw something that could be done and said, let's do it. And I'm reminded of what the president did when he came on board. He had a whole plethora of stuff to deal with. You know, insurrection, mad white folk who want to overthrow the government. But what did he undertake? He undertook what was probably the most pressing thing and did that. Let's get people vaccinated. Let's turn the tide, because even though it's an easy task, it's a simple task, but it's not easy or simple if nobody's doing it. The bottom line is, as we look around at our young generation, and I'm quite sure that every generation has looked at subsequent generations and wondered, are they getting it? Do they understand? Do they really see what the challenge is? But that doesn't resolve us or absolve us of our responsibility to tell them. Whether they're listening or not, we have to tell them. I remember my granddaddy telling me things that didn't make sense to me in high school. Now, when I'm rapidly approaching his age, when he was living with us, what he said to me made perfect sense now. It took me a little while. It took me a little seasoning to understand that my grandfather had more wisdom than I gave him credit for. No, he didn't have a 6th grade education, but he was the wisest man I knew. And he taught me a lesson that a lot of us were you know, it went over our heads. You know, I remember telling my granddaddy I couldn't wait to get grown so I could have a Lincoln Continental. And my grandfather said, son, they're going to always make Lincolns. He said, you need to buy some land because they ain't making no more of that. And only one of my cousins listened to my grandfather's advice as a young man. As we got older, we saw the wisdom of that. But one of my cousins in his 20s, when folks, before he bought a house, he followed granddaddy's advice and bought property. Needless to say, this brother ended up retiring young. He bought this property for, you know, pennies on the dollar, it seemed. He sold a big amount to the point where in his old age, he lived comfortably, following the advice that my grandfather gave. So the bottom line is, we are looking at a generation of young men who will succeed us. We have to do like the boy with the starfish. If we don't throw the one back in the ocean, that's one starfish that didn't die. If we can deal with the ones right around us, if we take care of those in our circle and pour into them, hopefully they will pour into others. And as we have opportunity to pour into each young person whose path we cross, that it doesn't seem like a great deal of impact, but every journey starts with the first step. We got to do the first things first, and that is reach those immediately around us.
But I want to second both of your comments, and I want to move to something just a little bit more serious. Society is broken. The social media can be the best thing in the world, such as Zoom now that permits us to be able to communicate it in church and business and offices and every place else, whereas we can't come together in major groups. But the social media also can be devastating because it tends to allow a dumbing down process. People speak in ebonics. You can't hardly understand what they're saying. They get on the social media and they use the F word and the S word every time they open their mouths, as if their children is not going to go to the social media, whether they know they're going there or not, and read their comments. Mm-hmm. And that profanity and the anger that is discussed. And we got boys and old men now walking around with their pants down below the belt. So society is permitting the opportunity and promoting the opportunity for us just to dumb ourselves down. Now, what do we do about that, Rev?
Well, I think a critical biblical principle that we hear it, but we don't really embrace it. The Bible says faith comes by hearing. And if you hear something enough, you will begin to embrace it, inculcate it, and if you're not careful, it becomes a part of you. And that goes for negative stuff as well as positive stuff. So if you're hearing negative things or if you're hearing lies, how many times have we heard folks say, so-and-so did thus and such? Oh, man, I don't believe that. Yeah, man, but I keep hearing it. And the more people hear the lie, the more comfortable they are with embracing the lie. So we have to be critical in making sure that we share truth, recognizing that some folks don't want to hear the truth. And we now see people who have embraced all kinds of madness that just doesn't make any sense. When this whole Q thing that's been going on and these lies, to the point that when people hear this stuff enough, they begin to think, well, must be something to it because everybody's talking about it. That doesn't make it true. And we have to be vigilant in calling a lie, calling truth, and holding people accountable when they speak something that is not true. In the 08 presidential campaign, I know you all saw the town hall meeting that John McCain hosted, and he and Obama went a bitter battle for the White House. And there was an old white woman that was at one of the rallies, and she told John McCain, "I don't like Obama. He's a Muslim." And what I appreciated, and John McCain got mad respect from me, he didn't give him a vote. I have mad respect for John McCain because He could have taken the easy road and let that woman stay in her lie. Instead, he said, no, that's not true. He said, I don't agree with him on his vision and his worldview, but it is not true. He is not a Muslim. And if he was a Muslim, that's not the issue. That's not what we're talking about. I have more respect for John McCain for speaking truth and letting a woman know, even though it would have been easier just to say, yeah, okay, well, that's what she believed. We have to have that boldness to be able to say, no, that's not true. Speak truth and hold people accountable when they want to repeat a lie. No, you can't repeat that. I'm not going to let you repeat that lie in my presence because that's not true. So we have the added challenge because folk always been lying. The rumor mill have always been running. Mm-hmm. The difference is now when this stuff hits the internet, when it hits social media, when it's out there on Twitter and everything else, no telling who's picking it up and repeating or retweeting that lie that goes out there. And at some point, we have to call a lie a lie and kill it in its tracks.
Josh, how do we stop the dumbing down process?
But there are two things, and Pastor Jones hit it right on the head. He knocked it out of the ballpark. And additionally, whatever we perceive, we believe it. So I use this statement all the time as I come from an IT background. And the statement is, I read something, I verify it first. Then once I verify it, I analyze it. So we have to be able to, I want to insert something extra in there. We have to be able to read something, be able to comprehend it, verify it, and then analyze it for what it's worth, be it truth or non-truth, truth or a lie. We have to get our young people to it's like eating sweets or for supper, because it's easy to take some out of the wrapper. It's a lot more work to go out in the garden and grow a bell pepper or a tomato, and you work at it and you nurture it. So we have to get our young people to work at nurturing, being able to read and comprehend and verifying. It's easy to consume news off of social media, but everything that's there, like I tell people, everything that's on the internet, because it looks like it's on a screen, you perceive it to be truth because it's on the screen. I was looking at something once, and it said Tuskegee University, Instant Tuskegee Normal, founded in 1818. Someone had did a typo, transposed some numbers, some letters, but it's on the internet. So I'm telling my niece, but it's on the internet. Just try to reason out, it's verified by going to other sources. So I think that's part of it. But at the same time, we have to, my computer said my internet is unstable, so I don't know if my voice is wavering or not. I may have to move back in another room. We have to also be able to have the strength to be able to stand up for when something is wrong and stand up for something is right. It goes both ways. If we're silent, just say we just let it go. We can't do that. I was in a situation once in a hearing, and the nurse or the social worker said, oh, the doctor said this person needs to stay in the hospital. And I said, it doesn't quite add up here. And nurses tend not to question doctors. That's how they're trained.
Absolutely.
But the key is, just because someone's in an authority role, there are other ways to get at it. So I said, well, ma'am, it just doesn't feel right. This lady's saying something else. Let's take a recess. Called the doctor. He said, yeah, she was in this state 2 days ago, but she's ready to go home. So that's the reasoning part and the analyzing part, because you got to be able to also be able, and I don't want to sound like I'm a saint when I say this, we have to also be able to rely on our faith and our relationship and teach our young people that it's not a sign of weakness to be able to have faith and believe, and you grow in it. It's like when you go outside and you plant a seed and you have to work at it, pull the weeds out, and all those kind of things. So our environment is also part of what we consume. So my point is that we have to get our young people and even our middle-aged people to read, comprehend, analyze, and then go from there. Because when we don't, perception, what you perceive, you believe. And that's the key to it. It's like if you're driving down the road and you have and you think you hear a noise, and you get out and you have a flat tire. Well, you have a flat tire. But if you also hear tip, 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 like maybe it's a nail in it, you perceive it could be a nail. It turns out it may be a rock that's making that sound. So we have to really verify. And that's the part I think we don't do, because it's so easy to, as I said earlier, to take the sweet honey bun or something out of the package and make that for a meal. It's a lot more work to go in the kitchen and prepare a meal from scratch. It's a lot more work to read something and analyze it and look it up and cross-reference. And that's where we got to be able to do that and analyze. When we see something wrong, we have to say something about it. We can't just let it roll, because young people watch us. Other people watch us. And they may not say anything, they take that as their nod. I will follow this direction. And so we can do that one person at a time, one child at a time, one instance at a time, and always keeping in mind we're removing ourselves from the situation in the sense that we're not trying to do it for fame and glory. We're trying to do it as a teachable moment. And just what we do and what we say is every chance we get, we can speak to someone and call it out. And let them know when you don't think something's right or when you don't feel something's right. And be able to back it up in a professional, polite way. But sometimes you got to get a little forceful with it in a polite, diplomatic way at the same time. And sometimes you got to meet force with force, because everybody's not. It's not a nice, gentle world out there. So you got to, whatever measures you got to take to ramp it up to meet it head on. You don't go out and put fire out with a teaspoon of water. You get a fire hose and you deal with it. So we have to deal with it at whatever level we need to.
Judge, this pandemic is really impacting us as adults in a way that I couldn't have ever imagined. This pandemic has us afraid. It has us confused. It has us being ill, uncertain, dying. Now, if we as adults are this confused, I believe that our children are being hit and hurt in a way that we can't even imagine. So now, you have 10 boys standing in front of you right now. Their ages 5 to 15. What do you say to those 10 boys about not only the pandemic, but just about manhood? What is manhood for boys?
Well, let me tell you a story, first of all. I think I must have been about maybe 12. And Pastor Jones, and I'm sure can relate to this. Where I'm from in Georgia, there's a thing we do where we go out and we have a hog killing. And those of you from the rural area know what I'm about to say. And there's this point where it's a rite of passage, at least in my family, where they give you a rifle and you get one round and you shoot the animal. And then the blood from that animal is taken, and it actually comes from Africa. Instead of taking a knife and putting those marks on you to transition from boy to manhood, they get the blood from the animal and they do the same thing. And of course, they didn't make us drink the blood or anything like that. But the point was there was somebody still standing back some ways with another weapon just in case we missed. so that we wouldn't ruin the meat, because it's all about the meat at the end of the day. So standing for all these boys, 5 to 12 or whatever ages they are, we have to let them know, first of all, to survive in this society, there's certain things that you have to do, and there's certain things that you have to do to like when I grew up, there were certain things I had to do during that time, like step off the sidewalk. But that didn't change my way I thought about myself. We have to always make our young boys or young people feel proud of themselves and their history and their family and where they're from. I'm from a little town in Georgia, and you probably heard me say this, called Alapugus, Georgia. It's about 463 people. Most people never heard of it. They can't even pronounce the word. We have to have our young people, first of all, for part of manhood, be proud of who you are. We have to also teach them our heritage and our history. That's very important, because they think about it. We come from a strong people who survived the boats, packed like cordwood. We have to tell them that story. And I used to sit and listen to my grandmother and my dads and my uncles talk about what it was like growing up. So we have to tell those stories and let them know that we are real. It's not just, we look like this today. We haven't always looked like that. We've always had to struggle. We always had to work together. When we did, going back to the reason I mentioned the thing about killing hogs, because we shared and we protected one another. When someone came in the neighborhood to do something to one of us, they had to do something to the whole neighborhood, because we banded together to protect the neighborhood, particularly the sisters. The boys, to the rest of the family too, but particularly the family, there were just some neighborhoods they knew not to come into. So we have to be able to teach our boys, you have to stick together, because we're still a family. We may not be blood relatives, but we stick together for the common good. And that's what I think has happened now. I think this society has got us so into this iPad, iPhone, ATM, me society. Everything is about me and me and me, that we forget about is us, us, us. So we have to teach that back. We have to model it, but also teach it. When you keep hearing it over and over again, when I was a child, I could swear I got so many whippings, because my aunt would always say, now don't you go and be like Tom, Dick, and Harry. And I would sometimes turn my back and say, Tom, Dick, and Harry with my back turned, because I got tired of hearing about Tom, Dick, and Harry. But the point was, I heard these lessons over and over and over again. It was really programming me. It was really equipping me, things that I use now that I didn't realize they were putting things in my life's backpack that I didn't know I was going to need later on the journey. I had no idea I was going to need them. It didn't make sense to me. So we have to equip our boys with all those life lessons we've learned and our foreparents have learned and people before them have learned in their life backpack. And you may not need it now, but later on down the road, somehow you pull this kit, this tool out of life, of survival, and you use it. And so we have to equip our people to be proud, our young people to be proud of where we're from, how we survived, how we banded together, how we took things that other people thought were just junk, like chicken feet and things like that are now delicacy, like chitterlings, like now delicacy, and we made it. And my folks did more with the jar system than most of us do with a bank account. So we have to know that they made it. My 2 aunts and grandmother, they cleared 2.5 acres at night because they had to work on a sharecropper's place in the daytime, and they did it all by hand. Well, I told my children that story because they have to understand it's a struggle. We didn't get where we got just because somebody handed us something. So we have to teach that manhood by telling the stories of how the struggle is and also where the failures are. Because they got to know we've had failures and how we overcome those failures. It's not all just gravy and cream. We've had failures along the way. And we have to teach that. And students and young people have to know that. They see us in a suit or shirt and tie and think it's all of that. But behind that is some bruises.
Amen.
We're here to share those bruises and how we survive those bruises. And our faith is really, for us, is really key. And what we believe in is key. the story of Job. There are going to be times when your friends and things are going to, their friends perceive are going to turn away. And they're going to be tested. So, but I could talk all night, but I don't want to, start preaching almost, but I kind of get worked up when I think about it. What they did and sacrificed to build the next generation and equip us with the backpack of life to be able to take that journey. And it sounds all of that, but in reality, like Pastor Jones said, some things his granddad was telling him didn't make sense then, but they make a whole lot of sense now. Because he didn't realize he needed them, so he planted a seed then that now has grown, and now he's reaping the harvest from it. So Pastor Jones had to plant that seed again, and someone else other than Kenny and others.
Absolutely.
So that seed will grow stronger and stronger.
Rev, what do you tell your 10 boys?
Well, the most valuable lesson that my father taught me, and when I was a little boy hearing it, it didn't make sense. Where that word became flesh for me, there was a situation with one of my cousins. My father always said, a man's word is his bond. A man's word is his bond. Didn't make sense to me. I was in college. I was in college. I was a freshman. And one of my cousins borrowed $20 from my dad. Uncle Richard, I need $20. I'll bring it back Wednesday. Okay. Dad went in his pocket, pulled out $20. $20 wasn't going to make him or break him. But my cousin needed that $20. Wednesday came, my cousin Duke wasn't there with the $20. Thursday, Duke wasn't there with the $20. Friday, Duke still hadn't showed up with that $20. Saturday morning, I'm sitting down at the breakfast table, me and another one of my cousins. My daddy said, go find your cousin Duke, and you tell him my exact words. If our relationship ain't worth but $20, keep that $20, but never darken my door again. Tell him he need to bring me my money, even if he has to borrow it back, because a man's word is his bond. And and we went to Duke's house and told him, when we walked in the door, my young cousin said to him, the warden want to see you. And we told him exactly what Daddy said. Daddy said, if our relationship ain't worth but $20, keep it. He put his pants on. He came with $20. Uncle Richard, I'm sorry. Put that $20 in front of him and said, Uncle Richard, can I borrow it back? And Daddy gave it back to him. And he told him, son, the money is not important. What's important is your word is your bond. If you say you're going to do something, do it. If you're not going to do it, don't say it. And that resonated with me, and I shared that with my son. And there was a situation when he was at Booker T, where Colonel Flowers wanted him to march in one of the parades. He had to beat the drum to keep cadence for the ROTC. Well, he didn't want to beat the drum in ROTCs. He'd rather beat the drum with the band. So he didn't show up. Colonel Flowers was hot. And he told him, bring me my uniform. And then when he calmed down a bit, he said, you go home and tell your father what you did. And when he told me, I said, son, what do I always say to you? Your word is your bond. I said, did you keep your word to Colonel Flowers? No, sir. You need to go apologize to Colonel Flowers. And if he wants his uniform, you give him that uniform, but you also apologize because you didn't keep your word. And he did. He went back. He apologized. Colonel Flowers said, well, I'm all right. You keep your uniform. You're okay. And the next time I saw him, he said, Reverend Jones, thank you. You're still in good order. And it's a basic principle that my father, my grandfather, my uncles, they taught me. Your word is your bond. Because don't nobody want to be affiliated with somebody who will say something and won't keep their word. It's better for you to say, I won't be able to do it than to say, I'm going to do it and not show up. And it taught me that there is a level of accountability that we must hold each other. Young men, old men, we have to hold each other accountable.
Okay, I got my 10 here. And I'm going to talk to my 10. And I'm going to tell my 10 to be true to yourselves. Because honest to God, America is just a lie. Mm-hmm. Advertisements, they lie to you about something being free. But in the fine print, they're getting you for big bucks. Yes. Those lies are intrinsically ingrained into the psyche of people. And I can imagine a regular person saying, well, if the professional people are lying, why can't I? Mm-hmm. Politicians are lying. So the whole cotton-picking American society at this point is just a lie. Now I see a move toward some truth, and I was glad to hear Reverend Jones bring into this conversation tonight truth. Some truth is creeping in because I see a second civil war now between white folks. You know, we're watching it, but we're not a part of it. They're going at each other like it's going out of style. The only thing different from this and the first Civil War is they're not killing each other by the dozen with guns. But they certainly are slamming each other with some devastating words and charges. I'm going to tell my boys to stop cursing. The F word, the S word. It doesn't make any difference whether grandma's around or whether Miss Mary or Sue down the street is around. It's what I feel like I'm supposed to be able to say. And while you're free speech, there ain't no such thing as no free speech that gives you the right to use a profanity in the presence of your grandma. You know, they even have a criminal law called disorderly conduct.
That's right.
Constitution says freedom of speech. Disorderly conduct says if you say anything offensive in front of a person that is offended by it, you can be arrested and taken to jail for disorderly conduct. You see? So I want my boys to understand that. I'm going to tell my boys to pull their pants up and stop slouching and slumpering. Now, how in the world do you, as a black man, walk down the street with your pants falling off your body? Your mind is divided between where you're going, what you're going to do when you get there, and the fact that you got to pull your pants up every, 20 seconds, you know? And so there's something wrong with that. There's something wrong with the craziness that goes into any man walking around with his pants down around his thighs. You know, it doesn't make sense to me. And we've got to have the guts and the gall and the audacity to stand toe-to-toe with your 10 and say, look, pull your cotton-picking pants up, boy. Now, you can drop them 20 minutes later when you go down the street, but right now, you need to pull your pants up. I'm going to tell them not to steal. Mm-hmm. You know, and you get a job in Walmart, and just because your friends come through there, you can't let your friends steal either. Mm-hmm. Because they got cameras all over the place watching every move you make. Your tally from the cash register is going to register what you process and what you collected money for. So if you let your friends steal, it won't be long before you are fired. I'm going to tell them not to kill one another because it does not make sense. I carried a gun for many, many moons, never killed anybody. Reverend Jones carried a gun as a park ranger for many, many moons, never killed anybody. You know? So now, if we had the hectic responsibility of coping with the trauma that goes on in society for all the years that we were out there battling it, and if we didn't kill anybody, well then why are you killing in Pennsylvania, in California, LA, and Chicago, 60 and 70 people per weekend, shooting up 60 or 70, and 10, 12, or 14 of them died? So I'm going to let them know that there's something crazy about that, and they ought to have the will to not want to be crazy and not to do crazy. And I'm going to end up my conversation to them by telling them they must love, trust, and respect themselves. Because if you don't respect yourself, you can't respect nobody else, including mama, daddy, grandma, grandpa, and nobody else. And so now I'm telling you, I believe, and I want this to be the kickoff, if you guys will agree, that we do this over and over and over, invite other men of character into our rank, and that we eventually down the road bring a young boy in with us, to start to grow them publicly in this preaching that we are doing to them, in this teaching that we are doing to them, and this praying that we are doing for them. So now I'm going to end it here with the going out statement of anything that you men have on your mind until the next time. Reverend Jones, what's on your mind?
Well, I agree with you, Chief. We have to instill that truthfulness, that integrity of being true to yourself. And we also have to go back and I'm not going to apologize for being an old man or older man, but we have to go back and teach those fundamental laws of integrity. That the world is not going to give you anything. You have to be the best that you can be. Don't get upset when you encounter unfairness. It's going to happen. It happens to a lot of folks, but it's not how much you know or who you know or how much money you got. At the end of the day, it's about your attitude. It's your attitude and not your aptitude that determine your altitude. If your attitude ain't right, you ain't going nowhere. If your attitude is not right, when adversity comes, and it's coming, you're going to get stuck. And you cannot move on if you stuck. And I think we need to share that with them. We have too many young black men who've gotten sidetracked, and some of them never come to themselves. Some of them die in the hog pen, like the prodigal son. At least the prodigal son came to himself and realized, you know what? My daddy's servants eat better than I'm eating right now. Let me go home, repent, and ask him for a job. But some folks die in the hog pen because they never come to themselves. They never come to the realization that I need to make an adjustment.
Judge?
I think it seems to me one key thing, in addition to life values, character, integrity, trust, work ethic, that we face in this county, because it's predominantly African American, is that how to survive in the rest of the world. How to be able to cope with the rest of the world when you leave this county. I grew up in a mixed system where the high school was 51% black and 49% white. If I brought and showed you my high school yearbook, how it was so balanced, If there was a white king and queen sophomore, there was a black king and queen sophomore. It was just each side was watching each other just that closely. But I learned how to survive in that mixed society. Our people do not have the benefit of learning how to survive because they don't have to experience it. And sometimes we get lost when we leave Macon County and have to go out in the rest of the world, and the system just beats us down because we don't know how to stand tall and survive and know that it's not fair. And as Pastor Jones has said, you got to be twice as good. You got to also be on your A game. You also got to be observant and watch it when the game is being played and know how to deal with it and face it head on and stand up. When people realize you'll stand up and you won't compromise, then you're perceived a different way.
And Judge, can you do that if you get angry all the time and want to cuss and fuss and raise Cain?
You can't do that because people will not hear you. People will go on the all defensive every time, and get the defense and use it as an excuse. I had an instance when I was an intern in engineering at AT&T, and my boss did everything he could to frustrate me. And he went on vacation for 2 weeks. Now I accomplished so much in those 2 weeks. Every time I would open a technical manual, he would come over and say, "You're in the wrong book, you're in the wrong book, you're wasting company time." He went away for 2 weeks. I survived all that. I got so much work done in those 2 weeks. When he came back, his boss told him, he said, "Cooper did all this while you were out, so what's the problem?" My boss had a phobia. He didn't want me to really be there because the project I was working on, he wanted. So at some point, what I'm about to tell you, it doesn't really sound like me. But at some point, you push someone in the corner. So this guy was named Norm. I said, "Norm," we were in the lab. I said, "Norm, this has got to end. One of us going to go out of here on a stretcher, and one of us going to go out of here in handcuffs. And I can guarantee you, I'm not going to be on the stretcher." When I told him that, we became the best of friends.
That's nigology.
And so, absolutely. So the point I'm making is that he said, "I really didn't want you here. I wanted this job because I needed to do this job, this particular project, to get a raise. I was the first person they had new in 12 years of any race, because it was an old boys club, all ex-military, AT&T. I was the first African-American they had in like 17 years. So he didn't really want me there. What he didn't understand was the game was also being played on him. Is that he was being tested to see if he could manage, to see if he was management material. If he couldn't manage a college student, how could he manage a whole room full of engineers? So the point was I had to be strong enough to push through that and to persevere, because the last African-American guy they had just walked off the job and then come back. Just disappeared, then couldn't handle it. So now I got angry in a way, but angry in a way to get him off of me. But I still was very professional about it. And of course we were one-on-one, so there was no way to prove anything. But the point was, we also had to teach our young boys and our young people how to also not be angry with society, to the point where there's always someone who can help you, and to help you in a way to be life-changing. I've had so many people help me that's been life-changing. They could have not helped me, and then I would have been a different person.
Man. Also, if I may interject here, some things you ought to be angry about.
Well, sure.
But the Bible says, "Be angry, but sin not." I can be angry, but not belligerent. I can be angry, but still get the job done. I should be angry enough that I'm going to do something to make it better. And that anger should be a motivator in order to seek an acceptable means by which I can make this thing turn around the way that it needs to be.
Well, that's kind of like angry with the cause.
Absolutely.
We just made a clarion call to black men to be better, to do better by themselves. And I'm going to continue this, and you have a standing invitation. Every time that it pops up, you'll receive invitations. And I hope that we can say something that will inspire some young boy somewhere. And some old man that's walking around out here just wasting away or not using their good common sense to be better and do better. And I want to thank you for showing up tonight.
All right,
Chief. Thank you for having me, Chief.
It's a blessing to be together.